Xtalks is the industry leader in connecting life science, food, healthcare, and medical device professionals. The Xtalks Life Science podcast features insightful conversations with industry experts about all things pharma, biotech, and more.
Hello and welcome to the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. I'm Ayesha Rashid, Senior Life Science Journalist at Xtalks.com, and this week I'm happy to introduce a very special guest on the show. We have with us today Dr. Shalabh Gupta, who is the founder, chairman of the board of directors, and CEO of Unicycive Therapeutics, a company addressing the most pressing and unmet medical needs in renal diseases, including chronic kidney disease. Prior to Unicycive, Dr. Gupta served in various leadership roles within the industry, including founder and CEO of Biocisive, a commercial strategy role at Genentech, and an equity researcher covering pharma and biotech at UBS Investment Bank and Rodman and Renshaw, currently H.C. Wainwright, respectively. Dr. Gupta previously served as a medical advisor to Synageva Biopharma and as an advisor to NYU Langone Medical Center's Office of Technology Transfer. Dr. Gupta is also an advisor to the UCSF Innovation Center, a role he has held since 2020, among various other leadership roles within the industry and academia as well. Before his roles in business and finance, Dr. Gupta was an attending physician at NYU Medical Center and a clinical faculty member at the NYU School of Medicine. To hear more about the current and future landscape of kidney disease treatment, let's turn to Dr. Gupta now. Thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Gupta, as I've outlined in my intro, you've had a very diverse and prolific career spanning medicine, finance, and entrepreneurship. What inspired your transition from being a physician to leading biotech companies?
As a physician, my career was to take care of patients, focused on both the science part of it, also taking care of them overall holistically to make them feel better, to look at overall health. What I found as a physician, I could take care of a few patients at a time, say 5, 10 patients in a day. That translates to a few thousand patients in a year. But if you expand that a little bit broadly, today what we do at Unicycive or in biotech industry, that has a potential to impact millions and millions of patients. So in some way, I've transitioned out of medicine, and in other ways, what I used to do then is exactly somewhat similar to what I'm doing today.
Indeed, that's a great way to put it in terms of I feel like you're having a broader and wider impact through the work that you're leading at Unicycive and in biotech, really, to have a broad impact potentially. So that's really wonderful to hear about. And so can you tell us a bit about your journey in founding Unicycive Therapeutics and what motivated you to start the company?
By way of background, as you pointed out, I have been a physician. I practiced medicine for over a decade in New York. What I found in order to build a company and organization, I wanted to work in a space which was not very crowded. Nephrology or kidney diseases seem to be a place where innovation hasn't happened. There have been innovation, but not at the same pace as they have happened in some other areas of medicine like oncology. So one factor was that they wanted to find an opportunity where, as a small company, we could make a difference. The second was to be in a space where there's a portfolio of assets, so it's not a one drug company, but more of a drugs that are addressing the problem. And the third thing was something that we could bring to the market in a relatively short period of time. Different companies have different focus. I did not want to be building a company that would take decade and decade because, as you know, typically people think about drug development. It takes much, much longer. People always think about it as a long-term process. So combining all these three factors together, I started Unicycive with focus on kidney diseases and acquired 2 different medicines, 2 different drug candidates that came from 2 different companies and built a company. And what I will say that that was initiation, that was effort on my part. What I've been fortunate to have is the support of my team, the team I've built, and the people who've joined since then.
That's wonderful. And you did touch on this in terms of this space that Unicycive is in renal diseases. And so, what are really the core missions and goals of Unicycive in terms of the focus on kidney diseases and rare diseases? And I guess this also goes into my next question in terms of what gaps in treatment are you hoping to address with the company's pipeline of therapies?
Sure. So to look at a broader picture, chronic kidney diseases are not necessarily they start because there is a problem in kidney. Chronic kidney disease or kidneys and livers are two end organs. They are two parts of the body, two organs in the body that help with anything we ingest, anything we take, and their end organs. So kidneys and liver will filter out any food you take, any medicine we take, any water, beverages, whatnot. The commonest cause for chronic kidney disease is diabetes. Then it comes down to high blood pressure, hypertension. So even though we are focused on kidney diseases, but we are looking at a much broader patient population. Patients who are on dialysis, they are on dialysis because they're in the end stage of chronic kidney disease. That's stage 5 or, terminal stage. But prior to that, 1 in 7 adults in the US suffers from chronic kidney disease. So if you are sitting at a Thanksgiving dinner, if you look around the table, 1 in 7 person would have chronic kidney disease, except they don't know it. So it's a pretty big problem. And the reason I say this to you, because like most things, if you can identify it early, perhaps you can try to stop the deterioration. So we have two medicines, which I can talk about it. One addresses a patient population who are on dialysis. So that's one, our lead drug. And the second one is an acute setting where we can potentially reduce the patient from going into the chronic kidney disease.
That's excellent. So you're really covering kind of both ends of the spectrum, so to say, addressing acute, early, and also late stage disease. And in terms of, we'd love to hear more about some of your lead candidates at Unicycive, and really what is the approach behind them, and what stages of development are they at, and how are they differentiated from other therapies on the market? As you mentioned, actually, that there's great unmet need because there are limited treatment options. But what sets Unicycive's approach apart from, let's say, other companies working in the field? And if you could share some more about them.
Absolutely. So let me talk about the first drug first, which is a drug called oxylanthanum carbonate. We don't have to remember all the name, but it's OLC for short. That drug is indicated in patients who are on dialysis. To provide just a little bit of context, patients who are on dialysis, as you can imagine, dialysis is the last stage of kidney diseases. And dialysis machine or dialysis filters are supposed to take care of things the kidneys would normally do. So these are the patients. There are roughly 500,000 patients in the US who are on dialysis every year. 80% of those patients, that's 400,000 patients, need something to manage their phosphate. The question that one could ask, why do you need to manage phosphate? Because I thought dialysis machine will take care of all the bad things. Answer is not quite so. And that's an interesting part, because phosphate does not get stuck to the filter, or it passes through the filter. So people like you and me, if our kidneys are normal, we don't have to worry about phosphate. You will never hear, for most people, that if you go to a primary care doctor, your doctor will say, you should not take too much of phosphate, because whatever phosphate we eat, it goes out and gets excreted out. We pee it out. But patients who are on dialysis, they don't make urine. Their phosphate is going to continue to build on their body. And phosphate is a silent killer, because if phosphate is in the body, it combines with calcium. It causes two major problems. Number one is that calcium and phosphate combine together. They call atherosclerosis, which is stiffening of the blood vessel. So people who have kidney diseases have high phosphate. They die from heart attacks, cardiovascular trouble. And number two is that the calcium and phosphate can also combine together and get deposited to soft tissue of the body. So some of these patients have a lump of a bone coming out of their arms, for example, and it's very painful and causes fractures and so on and so forth. The phosphate directly correlates with increased risk of mortality. If 1 milligram per deciliter increase in serum phosphate can cause increase in mortality by 10 to 15% and increase risk of hospitalization 10 to 15%. So that's a big problem. Currently, there are six approved treatments. Six approved treatments. So it is not a disease where there is nothing has been approved. But that's exactly why I want to address it. What is the unique feature we offer? With six approved treatment over last decade plus, the the target level, which is a target that is recommended by the various agencies, and it's the guideline. The guideline says if you are conservative, you one should have a serum phosphate below 4.5. If you are bit more lenient, it's 5.5 milligram per deciliter. 75% of US population on more stringent criteria has not met serum phosphate level for last decade. If you are lenient, 44% of US population has not met the serum target level. And that behooves the question, how come? And that's where I want to talk about our value proposition. Six approved drug, yet 75% of patients have not met their serum phosphate because there are three problems with existing treatment. Number one, patients end up in taking a large number of pills. Let me give you a little bit more color on this. We are talking about 10 to 15 pills per day for this disease alone. These patients who are on dialysis, they are taking 20 to 30 pills per day. And Aisha, we are not talking about taking a pill for a week or day or month. We're talking about the entire lifetime. If I tell a patient that you have to take 15 pills per day, as I saw in my clinical practice, most patients feel defeated to start with. So of the 30 pills they're taking, 15 of them, if they're taking 20, 10 of them are because of hyperphosphatemia treatment. So that's a problem number one. Number two is that many of these patients, if they're not taking large number of pills because there are other options, they take large size pills. And you say, well, I don't care. I could take large size pills. You may be right. If you have to do it for a day or week, but those large size pills have to be chewed. So essentially, imagine after every meal, I ask you to chew a pill that tastes like iron or a metal. And I ask you to please chew it. If you don't chew it, it will not help you. Yeah, so that's a problem number two, large number of pills. Problem number two, large size pill. And the number three is the pills that don't taste really. We are talking about asking them to chew metal. So these three problems, large number of pills, if that's one option, or large size pills, that's second. And third is large size pills that have to be chewed. Because of these three issues, patients have not been able to consistently take their medications, and therefore the phosphate doesn't get controlled. The other part is that if a patient does not take their phosphate lowering drug, they don't feel symptoms. It's not like they start to have chest pain. So it is easy for them to just ignore this, not because they don't want to do it, but they're bogged down with all other medications. So the net effect is that we have 75% of population that does not have adequate control. Our drug offers a solution by taking a size of baby aspirin pill, a small size pill. For 70% of patients, one pill they can swallow with each meal. That is it. So 3 pills per day. And these medications come with different doses. But what we saw in a clinical trial that roughly 70% of patients, they can take 3 pills or less. So they're required or they're asked to take pills with each meal. So if they're taking breakfast, they take a pill with breakfast. They're eating lunch, they take a pill with lunch, and same thing with dinner. So 3 pills with each meal. If a patient skips a meal, they can take 2 pills with a larger meal. That's the recommendation. And we believe we have an option to bring this drug to market where patients just are tired of or feel overwhelmed with the pill burden or pill size and pill taste. Our pill is a small pill that you can swallow. It doesn't require to be chewed and seems a simple innovation. And a lot of times in the beginning, when you talk to people, people say, so what? The so what answer is that many times some of the best solutions They are very intuitive and they're common sense. So it's not a very complicated
So
story to
true.
tell.
Yeah. No, that is exceptional, I would say, just because I think those simple things get overlooked a lot. And then those simple things
Right.
lead to so many complexities in terms of how you've talked about adherence to medication,
But
telling a patient to have over 15 medications or a large pill or to chew something that's so, unpleasant. I mean, those are such important factors, and it really speaks to the patient. Like
right.
all of these things speak to keeping the patient in mind. We hear about patient centricity and all of that, patient centric models in the industry. But what does that really mean? Oftentimes I ask, and this is what essentially it means: keeping the patient at the center and at the forefront. So it's actually mind-blowing to me. It's simple, but it's so important and so overlooked. So that's,
Right.
yeah, amazing.
And
Yeah.
it's not just the patient. If you ask physicians, which we did in one of our market research, 100 US nephrologists who are kidney doctors, they were asked, what is the number one problem that you anticipate or you see in your patients who are suffering from hyperphosphatemia? This was an unaided question, meaning there were no prompts, no multiple choice question. The number one problem they outlined, 60% of US nephrologists said the number one problem is pill burden. So what you said, Aisha, with regard to patients is something that physicians struggle with
Yeah.
too.
Right.
As a
Absolutely.
physician, when I practice
Yeah.
medicine, we want to do well for a
That's so
patient.
true.
And I
Yeah.
will tell you, patients want to also, it's very easy to say, well, they don't take the pill, what can I do? But if you put yourself in their shoes and you see what they have to go through, you start to see that it's not easy. I always tell people when they ask me in a broader audience, I say, if I ask you to take a medication for just 5 days, we take an example of Z-Pick, azithromycin. Most of the people will take it for first day, 2 or 3. Day 4, they've forgotten about it. Day 5, they don't need it.
Yeah.
If this could be true for majority of us, imagine asking a patient to take medications for which he or she will not suffer immediate consequences. And these patients are on other problems. They have got diabetes, they have to manage that. And
Yeah.
going for
Yeah.
hemodialysis, their life is not,
The
they
quality of
have a
life,
they have
as
a
we
difficult,
talk about,
yeah,
yeah, is
yeah,
is not there. And that's a great point. I think we often forget the physicians in the equation. And that's so important as well, because like I've actually, good physicians, they're frustrated as well, right? So they are so
yes,
important.
yes,
And to really, and there's so many amazing physicians that really are out there trying to help their patients. And so that's a very important aspect as well that's often overlooked. So I feel like this
right.
conversation is so important because you've brought to light a lot of aspects that are overlooked in that treatment and patient journey, as we call. So that this is so important. And in terms of, so you mentioned that the therapies, are they intended to be monotherapies, or are you looking at them to be used in combination with other existing or novel therapies?
So, very good question. Most of the patients are started on monotherapy because if you're giving a particular class, which is a binder, these are called binder because they bind phosphate and take it out of the body. But some patients, a smaller number of patients, say 10 to 15%, would be on combination. It could be even more. But a small subset of patients may be on a combination therapy. Our drug, as we expect it to be used as a monotherapy. So they take one pill with, as I mentioned, maybe 3 times a day or less, or maybe even larger number of pills, because there are some patients who may need more than 3 pills. But regardless, we are looking at most of the patients being managed by monotherapy. There will be small subset of patients who may benefit by combining two different classes. So they could be combination, but majority of patients we are talking about is monotherapy.
Okay, great. And in terms of, I think, really the kidney disease landscape currently, in your opinion, you've been in this space for a long time, and starting up different companies and leading at other companies, and also in academia. What evolutions or what changes have you seen in the landscape, let's say in the last decade or so? And what do you see the current landscape being? What are sort of the current trends? Where is the landscape kind of at right now, and where is it headed? And this could be in terms of technology. It could be in terms of
Sure.
better understanding disease biology or trends in drug development.
It's a very broad question,
Yeah.
so I'll narrow it down.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want to talk about the innovation in nephrology or
Innovation, yeah.
kidney per se.
Mm-hmm.
But if you focus on one smaller subset of technology improvements, innovations with regard to drug development, um, there have been some very exciting developments by other companies and organizations. Um, there are certain genetic diseases. There, for example, take a IgA nephropathy, where people end up in their autoimmune, or IgF nephropathy is more of an autoimmune disorder. There are genetic diseases which then cause kidney problems. There have been new treatments approved recently, more new treatments that are coming in. So the patients who had otherwise no hope now are seeing standard of care going up every year after year. So those diseases, when they become drugs become available, that gives physicians and patients hope that new innovations can come. Our second drug is focused on acute kidney injury, and this is again one of those diseases. In 1 in 5 patients who go to the U.S. hospitals and they develop AKI, they die from it. Because acute kidney injury is something that, again, is not because of the kidney problem. There are several things that can cause acute kidney injury. Many times, they are patients who are in the hospital for other medical conditions, and kidneys stop working. Uh, Broadly speaking, what we want to focus on, can we make AKI, as the term is called, which is acute kidney injury, can we stop it at acute level and not ever become a chronic problem? Um, I've often talked to people that the human body, or the way we were designed, we don't work because after 90 days the body says, now is your time to go to CKD from AKI. But we have characterized these diseases in acute versus chronic for sake of simplicity and how we describe and for treatment paradigm. But the idea is simple. If you can stop an acute injury at acute level and perhaps not let it go to chronic level, then we can stop the problem for getting really bad. So that's where our second drug is focused on. And lastly, just to touch upon, the new innovations in biomarker are really exciting. The last 5 years in treatment of kidney patients and kidney disease have been really, really uh, transformational. I think there is a lot more we can expect. Ideally speaking, we could one day, not too far in the future, we could stop patients from going on dialysis. So that's the goal, and that's what we all are striving to. And I think every small bit of improvement in the quality of care is an improvement. And while some companies are out there to find transformational treatment improvements and paradigm shift, we feel what I just shared with you, the story about the patients, I think this is a huge, huge deal for them. The only one anecdote I want to share with you, that when patients were in clinical trial and they were on a drug, and once we stopped the clinical trial, we finished the trial, the physicians went to them and asked them, "Can you give me the medicine back?" They said, "Doctor, whatever you do, don't take my medicine back." And these are the stories which are powerful stories, and when our physicians tell us that story, that give us the joy, and it's a purpose driven journey. So I think we, like I started by saying, it seems a very intuitive. It's not a story that requires you to have a PhD in biology or a medical degree, but it's something, if you have ever been involved to take care of grandma, grandpa, or somebody else, it you can relate to this problem. And I gave you multiple examples. If any one of us have to take a medicine for 5 days, we realize that the
Gosh,
day
yeah.
3 we start to feel better, we stop taking medicine.
Yeah. I think it's just so easy to kind of be dismissive of, oh, patients aren't taking their treatments, and in terms of metrics of patient adherence and treatment adherence. But there's there's a lot that's there that needs to be addressed. And I'm so glad that, leaders like yourself and companies like Unicycive are truly addressing that. And it's so fantastic. And Dr. Gupta, I'd like to, learn more about kind of like the financial and business aspects. I know we're jumping from,
Sure.
the important patient and physician and all of that whole landscape. But in terms of really, because you have a, background in so all of these things. And so how do you really merge, the science, the care and the patients, and then the business side of what it takes to really lead biotech companies? And so what are the differences, of course, between big pharma, small biotechs, and where is the current landscape at right now for the biotech industry?
So, um, essentially, it's a two-part question. The first one is how do you combine different skill set? The second thing is a biopharma versus a big biopharma or
Yeah.
pharma and biotech company. Let me answer the first question first. So, I think many of us early on in our career, we have a goal or mission or a dream of being somebody. Some of us start with a science background to be a scientist, and then we find that maybe we like something different. Um, the way I have tried to advise the people who are early on in their career to think about a career more like a hub and spoke. You have a different skill set that you can learn, and each skill set can help you to broaden your overall viewpoint. I started my career as a physician. I have a finance degree that helped me understand the broader aspects. So when you and I talk about patient adherence, what do we do as a company? It also gives us a very good understanding what does it do to overall cost of care. If a patient goes to hospital, even a single ER visit costs thousands of dollars to the healthcare system. As a physician, I've seen these patients on one side, but when I have a finance perspective, I understand what does it do to overall cost of care. So if I go with this understanding different skill sets, so early part of my career was medicine. Then I went to work on Wall Street as an analyst to understand how different companies are valued, and not only how companies think they are valued, but also how investors see the value, how a data or a release of information helps investors feel more comfortable or more excited about the company, valuation, stock movement. And I covered pharma companies, the big pharma companies. So I covered six of the largest companies like Pfizer, Merck, Wyeth, Schering-Plough, Lilly. Many of them are household names. Pfizer, for example, Lilly. So I understand what a pharma company is looking to do, but biotech companies are, to go back to answer your second question, biotech companies have traditionally been a source of innovation. Instead of thinking about one is better than the other, think about a complementary skill set, if you will. Smaller companies sometimes can focus on a drug development part, which is easier to do. They can advance the drug. But when you think about big pharma companies like a Pfizer as an example, they have established channels. So in an ideal world, there is a marriage of the two skill set or the complementary uh, skill set from a pharma team as a biotech team. But there is obviously blend. There are small biopharma companies that become big biopharma companies, and they are then themselves selling the drug. Um, then there are pharma companies that are very good in innovation and they are developing the drug on their own. But broadly speaking, this is the model that had worked, continues to work. There's a small company, there could be a technology coming out of Stanford, UCSF, people build a company, develop the drug, and when the drug is much later in the development or commercial, then they get acquired by a bigger company. So I see not so much about one is better or different than the other, but to understand that we are all trying to do the same thing, which is to bring new medicine to market. The part that is was useful for me in early in my career, but big or small, however you consider it, but I work for Genentech. That was definitely one of the bigger biotech companies, but fully integrated. They do the development as well as the commercialization. and Genentech became Roche, so I got to see that part as well. And in my small team, we call it a Navy SEAL team, where we are very focused, small by design, by choice. There is a joy in doing what we do, but I don't think one is better than the other. One is different than the other.
Indeed. And I think you touched on this just a bit, but in terms of partnerships and kind of collaborations and how, you mentioned that biotech and big pharma, they're not against each other per se. They're just different. And so we do see a lot of collaborations, and we do see a lot of perhaps the smaller companies maybe go into the fold of the bigger companies, or sometimes not. But in terms of just the broader landscape of partnerships, collaborations, how important are those? Because I feel like we hear more and more about them in today's kind of climate, rather than, let's say, a few years ago or maybe a decade ago. So can you speak to that? And this, it's not just within industry, but also academia, which you've also held, and you continue to hold roles there as well. So what's the importance of those kinds of collaborations?
I will give one very specific example, and it will be somewhat surprising to you if you haven't heard about our story. So we are a drug development company. Our technology is something that took an existing pill and made it a lot smaller. The technology did not come from from a original technology did not come from academia. It didn't come from Stanford, UCSF. It came from a car battery company.
Ah,
Car battery company that was using
yeah.
a nanoparticle technology to make the battery sizes smaller. So the innovation started there a decade plus ago. Another biotech company in Irvine, California, a company used to be called Spectrum, they acquired the technology, translated that nanoparticle technology to make a pill. They conducted, decade or so long innovation and made a phase one clinical trial done. Then they decided to not develop it. So I started the company, but I acquired this technology from the biotech company. But if you just look in the story of this development, the car battery company created the nanoparticle technology that went to another biotech company that comes to us. And now we are bringing this to market. The reason I give you this example is because innovations can come from anywhere. You have to have an open mind. You have to think about not so much where do I get the technology from, because there are a lot of people who have these check boxes. I feel that innovation, good ideas can come from anywhere. You have to have an open mind and find a way to bring to market sooner than later, right? There are examples, as you pointed out, outside biotech. Internet did not come from a tech company. It was a U.S. Department of Defense. So, there are many, many examples where a technology is invented somewhere else, but people
Yes.
find uses elsewhere.
A different
So
use
when
for
I
it. Yeah.
talk to, right, so when I talk to Stanford, some of the companies that I mentor, once a quarter, I mentor a company. Many times people are looking at AI as a tool. And I always say, don't focus so much on the tool. There is a lot of, talk about AI. These are tools. What we want to do, especially if we focus on healthcare, is think about how do you solve patient problem? How do you solve physician problem? How can you decrease the cost of care and increase the quality of care? And then I think whatever innovation we are working on, I chose the drug development side of it, but I advise sometimes companies that are focused on AI as a tool. But I can see that this is a tool. My nanoparticle technology is the tool. What they used to say that you don't know what is inside the computer chip that is in your laptop, you don't really care. I think to some extent the same idea is that where innovation comes from is important, but less so than what it can do for people, right? So that's a thought process there. And then obviously, as you asked earlier, that innovation has to make a business case, right? We're a publicly traded company, but we also have to think about investors. And the reason I say because without investors, without their support, the ecosystem does not work. Patient, physician, and investors. And I mean, like, without their support, we can't develop these drugs. It costs millions and millions of dollars to develop and advance the drug. So I think if I think about these three stakeholders, and that helps you build the mission part of it, right? It's not that we are only for profit company. Sure, we are for profit company, but the question is, how do you make profit? The answer is that by bringing the best medicine to patients and the ones that can. So it takes a bit of time to start to see sometimes very complex, analysis lie in a very simple principle. And I say this to you because the best companies are the ones that saw the best solution for the patient, because those are the companies that will generate the revenue that investors want to see. But so to me, and doing what we do, I always tell my kids and my family that for me, it's just a joy because we all do different things. But this is a very much something that every day we do something. And I don't mean just for the patients, I mean just with the CKD in Texas and in Massachusetts, but throughout the country, but also across the world. Our technology, we have licensed a drug in Southeast Asia, in South Korea. So we think this is a potential that can help people all over the world. So yeah, so it is exciting from that point of view.
I really love that in terms of how everything is so interconnected at the end of the day. Number one, I really love how you brought to light that this technology came from a car company, or, they had this technology, and really how innovation can come from anywhere. And talk about interdisciplinary. I think that's right. And so that's so cool. So very cool. And innovation, I think, is all around us. We just have to be open to it, I feel. And innovation is also created in many ways as well. And so that creativity also goes into that. To take that technology and to be able to translate it, that involves
Right.
a creative, almost artistic element. So I truly do believe things are interdisciplinary.
Right.
You're all Picassos in some way, scientists, right? The creation. And so, Dr. Gupta, what milestones can we expect from Unicycive in the next year, in the next couple of years? What are you most excited about, and what can we here at Xtalks keep our eyes out for? And everywhere else, of course.
We are very excited about our approval. A timeline is June. That's the FDA calls it the PDUFA date, so it's approval in the second quarter of this year. And then we are excited about launching the drug. So those are very near-term milestone. And we are excited about building the organization. We are excited about our second drug. I think being able to bring this from very inception, because many of us think about the molecules as something that is being developed in a lab, and then but seeing the drug ultimately go to patients is something that we all aspire, and it's a higher calling. But I feel very excited, and I take no credit out of it. It's my team, our investors who supported us. But the ultimate thing is that this drug is going to be in patients' hand not too far in future. I mentioned to you about global development. We work with the collaborators in all over the world. That's an exciting part. And then we think about how can we make patients' life better, decrease the cost of care, and bring the drug to people, as many people as possible. And that requires another layer of discipline and understanding, because commercialization of the drug is not that easy, and it's not because there are other levers that you have to be aware of it. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening at Unicycive, and we can't wait to give you more updates as we go forward.
Amazing. And we'll definitely keep our eyes out for it. And we can't wait to see all of the updates as well. So, Dr. Gupta, thank you so much for sharing all of the amazing insights and sharing all of the fantastic work that you're leading at Unicycive. And it's really innovators and leaders like yourself that make the innovations possible. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, that's the end of this episode of the Xtalks Life Science Podcast. If you liked today's show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.
To join the Xtalks community, visit xtalks.com and register for exclusive access to curated content like live webinars, news articles, and educational videos. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers sharing them and should not be taken as professional advice, nor do they necessarily reflect the policy or position of Honeycomb Worldwide. For further information, email us at podcast@xtalks.com.